ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयं मुदीरयेत्। In this session, we'll be discussing from the 31st verse of the 9th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vishuddhaya dharanaya hata ashubhaha tad ikshayayivashu gata yudhashramaha nivritta sarvendriya vritti vibhramaha tushtavajanyam visrujan janardanam. The meaning of this verse is, by pure meditation looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. So Bhishma is simultaneously an expert Ashtanga yogi and also perfect Bhakti yogi. He is simultaneously both. He is teaching by his example how a Ashtanga yogi should prepare himself for quitting the body. He is also teaching the devotees how a devotee should prepare himself to quit his body. Both he is teaching. Bhishma is teaching both. He is, of course, the Mahajana, the expert, the topmost authority, among the topmost authorities, 12 authorities, in practicing dharma and aiming to attain the highest perfection of practice of dharma, which is to go back to Godhead at the end of this life in the human form of body. So here it is described by pure meditation. This is the practice of the Ashtanga Yoga, pure meditation. Upon whom? Upon the Supreme Lord in the heart. Now Krishna says, I am seated in everybody's heart. So it is Krishna only who is seated in everyone's heart. Therefore, Bhishma Deva, by pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, of course, for Bhishma, there was no need to focus his attention on the inside of the heart. No need, because Krishna was right in front of him. The same Krishna who was seated on the heart was right in front of Bhishma Deva. So Bhishma Deva simply had to fix his mind upon the form of Lord Krishna standing in front of him. And by doing so, Bhishma was at once freed from all material inauspiciousness. This material body is full of inauspiciousness in so many ways. What is this body made up of? Flesh and blood and bone and stool and mucus and urine and all kinds of obnoxious things. So this body which we adore so much, just because of some facility for sense enjoyment, we give lot of value to the body, and we are forgetting that this body, after all, is something material and not made up of very nice substances. It is simply packaged with a covering called the skin. It's in another place in the Bhagavatam described as a leather bag, a skin bag made up of 3 elements called Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Air, Vata is air, and Pitta is bile secretion, and Kapha is mucus, obnoxious things, mucus and stool and urine and bone and flesh and blood, all horrible things. And we adore this body so much in ignorance. This is ignorance actually. You should understand from the scriptures that this body is not at all auspicious. It is full of inauspiciousness. So Bhishma Deva, by fixing his attention on Krishna, the transcendental form of Krishna in front of him, completely being absorbed in meditation on Krishna, he was freed at once from all material inauspiciousness. His consciousness became completely spiritualized. Krishna consciousness, he became situated in complete Krishna consciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by arrow wounds. All bodily pains completely gone because the consciousness is differently absorbed. Thus, all of the external activities of his senses at once stopped. So Prabhupada explains this. What is this external activities of the senses? So Prabhupada says in the purport, the material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. This material energy is the illusory energy. There's another energy called the spiritual energy, which is free from illusion. So this material energy is actually illusory energy. And this body is due to the illusory energy effect upon the soul, the spirit soul. So each one of us, we are not the body, we are spirit soul, we are completely spiritual by nature. But when there is the influence of the illusory energy, we become bewildered. We forget ourselves. And we identify with the material body, which is the covering for our real self. Further, Srila Prabhupada says, identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. All of us, each one of us, we have an eternal relation with Krishna. Because we belong to Krishna. We have a relationship with Krishna. In the spiritual world, we have a relationship with Krishna in the spiritual world. But we forget that when we are situated in the material body, by the influence of the illusory energy, we forget Krishna, we forget our relationship with Krishna, and we identify with this body as myself. If you ask me, who are you? I'll describe myself in terms of my body and mind. Body and mind. Which is not the real self, which is not me, which is my covering. There is a subtle covering called the mind and a gross covering called the material body, the external gross body. For a pure devotee of the Lord like Bhishma Deva, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. As soon as Krishna came in front of Bhishma Deva, by just fixing his attention on Krishna, who is the most attractive personality, most attractive, beautiful form in the whole creation. That supremely attractive Krishna came in front of Bhishma Deva. Bhishma Deva at once fixed his attention on Krishna and all his illusion was gone. Of course, as a pure devotee, he was never an illusion. But even if there was any material pain or material inauspiciousness, that was all completely, that disappeared when Krishna arrived in front of Bhishma Deva. So how does it work? Prabhupada explains by giving an example from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Krishna is like the sun, Krishna Surya Sama, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. Maya hoy andhakar. Maya, material energy, illusory energy is like darkness. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is like the sun. In the presence of the sun, there is no possibility that darkness can stand. Just like in the morning when the sun rises, there is no darkness that remains, which was there at the night when the sun was not in the sky. Similarly, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all material contamination is completely removed, and Bhishma Deva was thus able to be transcendently situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. This requires little explanation. Now, when we are not Krishna conscious, then our consciousness is limited to our body and the mind. In such a state of consciousness, we are we are performing activities with our senses, with the body, in collaboration with matter. That means the original senses, which are our spiritual senses, they are the ones we are utilizing for performing material activities through the covering called the body, the material senses. Like the hands, the legs, the eyes, the ears. We are seeing through the eyes, we are hearing through the ears, we are utilizing our hands for different activities, or the legs for walking, or for any other purpose, material purposes. So all this is impure because it is material, it's impure. The soul is originally pure, and also the senses, original senses are pure senses, spiritual senses. By material contamination, the senses assume the role of imperfection and impurity. So when we are covered by the material body, we identify with the body and we wrongly think that this material hand is my real hand, or the material eyes, this whole arrangement called the material eye, I think that is my eyes. I am completely forgetful of my spiritual eye, which is different from this material eye. My spiritual hand, different from my material hand. All my spiritual senses are different from my material senses. The material senses are covering the spiritual senses. So when we revive our contact with the Supreme Lord Krishna through devotional service or through yoga practice, the senses again become freed from material contamination. Then our original senses, spiritual senses, are awakened, and we act with our spiritual senses, we act spiritually. With spiritual senses, we perform spiritual activities, the same activities. And through the material senses, we perform material activities, the same activities. So, spiritual life means awakening our spiritual senses by contact with Krishna. This contact with Krishna is very easy through chanting and hearing the holy name of Krishna. Hare Krishna. When I say Hare Krishna, Krishna appears in the form of transcendental sound on my tongue, and Krishna appears in the form of sound. So I hear that sound, and thereby I contact the transcendental personality Krishna in the form of this transcendental sound. So then immediately I am freed from this material misconception, material covering. I am freed in the level of the consciousness. Then I can perform spiritual activities in spiritual consciousness. So this is the whole process of Bhaktivedanta. This has to be practiced. Just like I say Hare Krishna, I am freed from the material misconception, but again After saying Hare Krishna, when I stop saying Hare Krishna, again I go back to my original consciousness, material consciousness. So by practice, we learn to come out of this material consciousness, and when we are completely out of the material consciousness, by always being in Krishna consciousness, then no more this material covering will be effective. We'll be situated in a spiritual position, in spiritual consciousness. We'll discuss more in the next verse. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.